Evelyn Hart had always been known in Frontier Bend as the woman who carried herself like a steady flame, never bright enough to blind, never weak enough to flicker, but even flames grow tired when the wind never stops blowing. And for the past year, life had battered her from every direction until she wondered if there was anything left of her that wasn't worn or exhausted. After her father died, everything he built began unraveling faster than she could mend. The shop shelves emptied, suppliers demanded payment, ranchers tried to exploit her, and men with loud boots and louder mouths thought a woman alone was an invitation carved in the dirt. She had no brother, no cousin, no trusted neighbor willing to stand watch. So one late night, after another customer suggested she ought to marry before someone claims you without asking, she locked the shop, sat at her father's old desk, and wrote the kind of advertisement she had once sworn she'd never write. Frontier woman seeks a loyal, hard-working husband. Must be honest. Must be steady. Must be a man who values partnership. She didn't ask for handsomeness, charm, or wealth. She asked for steadiness, something the world had stolen from her far too early. She sent the letter with shaking hands, half hoping no one would reply. But 2 days later, she received a letter sealed neatly with wax, addressed in elegant handwriting she had never seen in this dusty town. The letter inside was simple, quiet, and strangely sincere. My name is Silas Ward. I'm not a talkative man, but I work with my hands and I keep my word. If you want a husband who stands beside you, I will come. If not, burn this letter and I will trouble you no further. The words struck her like a breath of cold air in a crowded room. They weren't poetic, weren't charming, they were honest. And she had forgotten what honesty looked like. When the train arrived a week later, Evelyn stood at the platform feeling foolish in her best dress, clutching the letter in her hand. She expected someone older, someone worn from drifting. But when Silas stepped off the train, the air seemed to rearrange itself around him. He was tall and broad-shouldered, hair dark and messy, as if wind lived permanently in it, with eyes the color of storm clouds waiting for a signal. He carried only one small bag, nothing else. No family, no past, just the weight he held in his posture. Like a man used to carrying more than he ever admitted, he walked toward her without hesitation. "Mrs. Hart?" he asked softly, voice barely above a whisper. When she nodded, he dipped his head in a quiet greeting. "I'm Silas Ward." And that was that. No grand gesture, no awkward fumbling, just a simple declaration from a simple man who had traveled hundreds of miles because she asked. That evening, they married in the sheriff's office with a signed document and a handshake from Sheriff Colling, who muttered, "Well, if quiet's what you wanted, Eve, you sure got it." The sheriff wasn't wrong. Silas spoke little, responded only when necessary, and observed everything without judgment. He moved through her shop and her life with the gentleness of someone afraid to break something important. And oddly, she didn't mind. For the first time in months, she slept through the night, knowing someone else existed under the same roof. Someone who rose before dawn to chop wood, fix the broken shutters, repair the cracked water troughs, and sweep the shop porch. Silas never bragged, never reminded her of what he did. He simply did it. And that quiet reliability began weaving itself into her chest like a thread she wasn't ready to admit she needed. Still, Frontier Bend was not kind to outsiders, especially ones who didn't talk much. Men at the saloon whispered that Silas was slow, simple, or hiding something. And women wondered aloud if Evelyn had married him out of desperation. But Silas never reacted. He simply carried crates, repaired fences, and nodded politely when spoken to. The only time Evelyn saw something fierce flicker in his eyes was when someone cursed at a horse or shoved past an elderly woman. But even then, he didn't speak. He just watched with a quiet that felt like held lightning. Days turned into weeks. They shared meals in silence, worked side by side stocking shelves, and exchanged brief glances at night before turning off the lamp. He wasn't affectionate, not yet, but he treated her with a respect deeper than touch. And every time she caught him, looking, really looking, there was something unspoken in his eyes, something warm and aching, She just didn't know how to reach it. Then came the harvest. Social, the biggest event of the year. When townsfolk gathered to dance, eat, laugh, gossip, and show off their best clothes. Evelyn wore her sky-blue dress, smoothing the fabric nervously as Silas hitched up the wagon. When he glanced at her, she caught the tiniest hitch in his breath, though he remained silent. At the social hall, couples twirled across the wooden floor, while children darted between benches. Evelyn joined conversations. Easily, she'd always been good with people, but Silas hung back, leaning against a wall, hands folded, eyes tracking her every movement, as if ensuring she stayed safe in the bustling chaos. More than once, she felt his gaze settle on her like a warm hand on her back. It wasn't possessive, it was protective, and it made something strange flutter inside her, but no good evening in. Frontier Bend ever lasted without someone trying to spoil it. And tonight that someone was Calder Briggs, a man who believed he owned the town simply because he owned the biggest ranch and the loudest voice. Drunk, red-faced, and smelling of whiskey that could peel paint, he staggered toward Evelyn with a grin that should have warned everyone within 10 yards. "Evelyn Hart," he shouted, "looking real fine tonight. Or should I say Evelyn Hartward?" His tone twisted her new name into a joke. Conversations around them died. Evelyn steadied herself. "Good evening, Calder." "Good for me, maybe," he slurred, "but not for your poor daddy. Bet he's spinning in his grave knowing his daughter went and bought herself a husband off a newspaper." People gasped. Evelyn's face flushed in humiliation. Calder's eyes narrowed maliciously. "A mail-order husband. Couldn't get a real man. Had to settle for some quiet little drifter who can't speak louder than a church mouse." He tipped his whiskey bottle toward Silas, who watched from a distance, still as a wolf studying a threat. But Evelyn tried to stay calm. "You're drunk," she said quietly. "Go home." "Oh, I'm drunk, sweetheart," Calder said loudly, "but I ain't blind. And I see clear as day. You married a man who ain't got spine enough to talk." He leaned closer until she smelled the sour stench on his breath. "Your daddy'd be ashamed. Eve, real ashamed. He never should have said her father's name. And he never should have insulted." Silas moved before anyone realized. He'd left his spot. 1 second he was across the room. The next, he stood in front of Evelyn, positioning himself between her and Calder. With a quietness so precise, it felt like the world held its breath. "You will apologize," Silas said softly. But something in his voice snapped the air in half. Calder barked a laugh. "To who? You?" Silas didn't blink. "To my wife." Calder sneered. "Or what? You'll whisper me to death." The crowd tensed, and then in less than a heartbeat, the man Frontier Bend called Too Quiet slammed. Calder against a wooden post so hard the lanterns shook. Gasps erupted. Calder's whiskey bottle shattered at their feet. Silas held him pinned with one hand as easily as if Calder were a misbehaving child. His voice dropped to a tone colder than Riverstone. "You will not speak her name again." Calder's mouth hung open. Silas leaned closer, eyes burning with a fury he had never revealed. "You will not insult her. You will not mock her father. You will not breathe in her direction unless she allows it. Do you understand?" Calder trembled, stunned into speechlessness. "I settle down now. Say her name again," Silas growled, "and I will break every part of you that thinks it has the right to touch her dignity." Only when Calder nodded frantically did Silas release him. Calder stumbled away, clutching his shirt, tripping over chairs before fleeing into the night like a scared dog. The hall was silent, music forgotten. Silas turned to Evelyn, chest rising and falling with the force of everything he had been holding in. When he spoke, his voice was still soft, but now it carried a weight that made her bones hum. "No one," he said, "insults my wife." Evelyn felt the world tilt. This quiet man, this unreadable, gentle, reserved stranger, had become a wall of unshakable protection. The second her name was harmed, "Silas," she whispered. "You didn't have to." "I did," he said, stepping closer. "Even if I never speak another word to another soul, you are mine to protect." And in that moment, Evelyn realized something terrifying and beautiful at the same time. This quiet man she had ordered from a newspaper wasn't quiet because he lacked emotion. He was quiet because his emotions ran so deep that speaking felt too small for them. And now those emotions were turning toward her with the slow, unstoppable force of a river breaking through winter ice. She felt her heart shift, her breath catch. Her world rearrange itself around the man standing before her. And it was only the beginning.